in the midst of these small number of people who are shouting hate, there is a packed room of people who are standing on love and love of neighbor.
Not only getting out there in our neighborhoods and knowing our neighbors, but walking with them, looking the same direction.
Let's offer that same grace and same understanding and same love to people who are doing the same thing but don't look quite like you do.
This is Pod Strangely Warmed, a place where we tell the good Methodist story, where we have conversations that invite followers of Jesus to seek after that loving, just, and free world that God imagines for us all, and have a little fun along the way.
Welcome back to Pod Strangely Warmed. I'm Reverend Kristin Warthen, and we are talking today some more about the intersections of life and faith and the world around us, all that entails. Specifically today, what it is to love our neighbors in the midst of a growing and changing community. And so we are joined today by Reverend Billy Echols-Richter and by Katrina Watland, who are pastor and lay leader of Grace United Methodist in Frisco, Texas, where we are seeing so much growth and so much change, and where Grace UMC has committed to showing up to love their neighbors and love their neighbors well. So Billy, Katrina, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Chris.
And I want to kick right off with talking about Grace UMC and how it is the church became so committed to showing up to love our neighbors of all backgrounds and what that has meant for the congregation there.
Sure. So Grace Avenue United Methodist Church was started 27 years ago in a little town at the time called Frisco, Texas. It was 20,000 people. 27 years later, there are 250,000 people living in Frisco. And so we have learned all along the way about the importance of meeting people in so many different ways. For us, we really talk about the importance of the journey of faith and how important it is. We call ourselves Grace Avenue specifically so that we can say to one another that we're on this journey together, right? And we can be called into a lot of different places in life, but we hope that God is always calling us back to the pathway of grace. One of the things that means for us, though, is that as we make our home in Frisco, we are committed to being good neighbors. We believe deeply in the great commandment that says, love God and love your neighbor. And what that means for us is not just loving some of our neighbors, not just loving the neighbors that go to our church, not just loving the neighbors who are Christian in the community, but the fact that we look at every person as a child of God. And so anybody that God puts in our way or in our path, then we want to be neighbors with them and love them and hopefully develop relationships with them. So that's really at the heart of where we are in terms of how we do this work.
I love that. I love it. And so, Katrina, how did you get involved with Grace, and how has your experience as a church member that's led you eventually to becoming lay leader and serving on conference committees even, how has that developed over time and rooted in you?
Yeah, when I moved to Frisco, which was in 2006, wasn't quite as small, but it was still a small town in a lot of ways. And I was just searching for a church that felt like it would be open and welcoming and warm. And in fact, it took me a couple years to even start that search. I kept driving back downtown to Dallas to the church I'd been going to. And so I think in visiting at Grace Avenue, sort of gently at first, I quickly realized that this was a place that would be open to me, to anyone in my family, to anyone in the community. Again, whether they looked like me or sounded like me, I knew that would be a place that I would feel comfortable. And I think just to explain by way of background, I grew up, we affectionately call ourselves global nomads. So those of us who have moved around a lot, and I was mostly moving around in Europe. But I had the good fortune then of being exposed to people who didn't speak the same languages that I speak, who maybe ate food that was different from mine, looked different, just had different cultural norms. And so that has just, for me, been a part of who I am and how I want to show up in the world, to be able to take those experiences and really love my neighbor, love all of my neighbors. So that's just kind of a few of the things that have brought me to to be a part of Grace Avenue and to serve in the church, the greater church as well.
So your experience is as one who has journeyed and traveled and just naturally met a lot of different people, because traveling will do that for us. Billy, your experience is I'm pastoring this church that was in this small town that has just exploded in the course of 25 years. And so I would love to know, what is the experience of being in Frisco as it's growing, as it's changing? What becomes some of the challenges for you based on like your experience, right? Being there and rooted, and then being all over the place and less rooted. How has that growth shaped the way you show up in the community based on your experiences? Have there been areas of challenge? Has it just been all sunshine and roses, right?
Right. Well, it's been a lot of change, and so as is natural with human beings, is that a lot of people are resistant to change, and so we have tried to accommodate that change and talk about the importance of that. I think the other thing too is just being good partners in the community. We have worked really hard to be, again, partners with our city officials and with our school district. We believe deeply in public education, and so we have really worked trying. And one of the things that we've seen is the rapid growth of diversity in our community. And so that is, on the one hand, I think, a beautiful asset, and yet it has become a challenge for a lot of people. I think there are close to 80 different languages that are spoken in the Frisco Independent School District. And that's one of the things that I've seen is the religious diversity that has come about in the last 27 years. Now, when I talk about partnership with the city, one of the things that I am really proud of in the city is that we've worked with great people that wanted to build a world-class city, world-class companies coming to our city, world-class facilities, a world-class school district, all of these different kinds of things. I'm really kind of surprised now. The world has said, we want to come to Frisco. And I think that's a wonderful thing. But for a lot of people, that's been a challenge.
Yeah.
Because they wanted all of these great things, but they didn't want all the new people that were coming along with it. And that's obviously something that's always part of a growing community.
What do you think is at the heart of that? I want the world class, right, experience. I want to be the best of the best. That feels pretty standard in not just America, everywhere. We want to be the best we can be. And at the same time, oh, wait a minute, this is too different. What do you think is at the heart of that tension?
I think a lot of times that is that fear of the unknown, fear of something that is different from what I know.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking on the question about challenges. I think I try to think, how can I show up in a way that might be helpful for some of my neighbors who do look and sound like me? How are ways that I can kind of challenge that? So if there's a fear then of the unknown, the fear of someone who doesn't talk like I do or who behaves in ways that are different from how I grew up. So I might say things like, I would use myself as an example. So in a space where people don't know me very well, I might say something like, I was not born in this country and English is not my first language. Well, then that surprises people. So they're willing to listen a little bit. And then I can tell them a little bit about, I was born in Norway, grew up moving around a lot. And then I can use examples from my own life and my own family. I have never been spoken down to or negatively about me walking around Frisco, Texas, speaking Norwegian with my children. People think that's lovely, and they are curious about that. However, if somebody is speaking another language, they maybe have a darker skin tone than I do, they get a very different reaction. So I think for me to help, I hope that can kind of help people understand that, okay, differences are not bad. You think this is cool, what I'm doing. So let's offer that same grace and same understanding and same love to people who are doing the same thing but don't look quite like you do. Yeah. So I think that fear is what kind of underlies a lot of that. And I hope that in some ways, just being able to share my own personal experiences can be helpful.
For me, there's a bit of a golden rule corollary that's in the midst of all of this.
Yeah.
And it's this idea that, treat others the way you want to be treated. And in our community where so many people are coming in new, and really our church is a microcosm of the community. One of the things that I know about our church, we have a newcomers gathering every month. And what I recognize is that no one was born and raised in Frisco that's over 30 years of age. Now, we've got a few that have been raised, our children, but you understand what I'm saying. Most of the adults in our church, they're from somewhere else. They're from somewhere far away. They're from somewhere nearby, but they're from somewhere else. And somebody reached out. Somebody went out of their way to welcome them and bring them in. And the real question is left with, if somebody did that for you to make you feel at home here, how is it now that you're not ready to do that for someone else? And that's true in a church, but then it's also true in the broader community, because I see so many people that are like, well, I got here and I assimilated and I was welcomed and I was affirmed. Now I want to shut the door. I don't want anybody else coming in behind. Who are these Johnny-come-latelys? And it's just not the gospel of how we understand in terms of how we do that. So I mean, I think there's very much kind of the spirit of the golden rule that's involved in all of this.
How do you keep that alive at Grace Avenue, in the community? How do you keep that spirit alive? What is it that you're doing and saying?
I think it starts with personal relationships. I mean, one of the keys to all this, we live by that axiom of nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care, and that is so true, especially in something like this. So when you come across someone who is different, has had different experiences, has come from a different background, maybe even speaks a different language, man, what an opportunity that is to get to know that person and to be in relationship with that person. And then it's amazing how those networks of connections start to branch out. And so I think keeping the spirit alive is when you can introduce somebody to somebody that's new. And that's one of the things I feel like my job as a pastor sometimes is not so much for everything to come to me, but for me to connect different people with other people. And sometimes that's people within the church. And again, sometimes that's people, and I will say people like Katrina do that for me. Katrina's experience in the community is so rich that a lot of times I'll say to Katrina, hey, would you introduce me to that person? I really would like to get to know them better.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like, I know, Billy, you're involved in the Interfaith Alliance. Yes, Alliance in Frisco. And I know, Katrina, you've been involved with several multicultural committees and involved at all levels. And so where have you seen, I loved your image, you kind of did this earlier, like roots reaching out. Like where have you seen those connections and roots like intersect and align in just some real beautiful ways in Frisco? Because I know, we're talking about how sometimes it's a challenge, but let's also talk about the beauty of those intersections.
I would say one of the things that I have been most grateful for is the people of other religious traditions outside of Christianity who clearly have come to Frisco more recently have done this wonderful job of opening their traditions to us. We have a beautiful mosque in our community. We have a large Hindu temple in our community. And those folks have done such a wonderful job of saying, come visit us, come see us. We'll be happy to, you got a group that's doing an interreligious study. We'd be happy to come and talk to you about our faith, but we can do it in our setting and you might learn something that's here. And so that kind of, and then what it's led to is then this kind of cross-cultural dialogue. I mean, we've had wonderful experiences where we have actually gotten together with like the people from the Islamic Center of Frisco came to our church one night and we just had a big dinner together and had a wonderful experience and time of conversation. One of the things that we've done in the Frisco Interfaith Alliance in the last year is that we have actually practiced and used the Project Unity group from Dallas and have done it together. We dine in an interfaith experience. And it's been very exciting to see people. And I think as much as anything, that's kind of what people want. Oftentimes it's just conversation.
Yeah.
And I think I appreciate those experiences through Grace Avenue. And this was years ago. I don't remember how many years ago, where we had an opportunity as church members to go visit together. It was still in a portable. It was before the actual building. Go visit, learn about the faith. Same at the Hindu temple. That was just such a great experience. And I remember bringing my oldest child. He came with me, and that was a shaping experience for him. And to walk into this space in your own community that's new and different, and to learn from that. Because again, then you're not fearful, because then you have a little bit of understanding. And a lot of the people that he was going to school with were going to either the temple or the mosque. So it was a great way for him to then connect in a different way with some of his peers. And again, to understand that and not have any fear about what that means and what that is inside that building.
Yeah. Well, and what I'm hearing in that is one of the antidotes, because I don't know that it's the cure-all, but one of the antidotes to that fear is curiosity.
Absolutely.
Sure, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. I love that idea, Kristin. I mean, the word curiosity comes from the word care. The Latin root is care, and there's nothing more caring than to say, I am interested in you. I am interested in what you're about. I want to know you as a person, and I want to know you as the person that God created.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, right, curiosity and care, we often think about the discipleship that we do and the mission work that we do as Christians, and we talk a lot about what we have to offer to everyone else, right? We know we do it. What have you learned in your experiences of meeting folks from other faith traditions, from other backgrounds, from other cultures? What has been just a handful of things that you've learned beyond?
I would just say the very first thing that comes to mind in any experience like that is you learn how much you have in common. And so if you're looking at other religious texts, for example, we think somehow this is very, very different, and it isn't. We all have the golden rule. We all have very similar ways of understanding our faith. And so that's just the first thing that jumps out at me is once you do that work, once you are curious, you realize very quickly there's so much more than we have in common than we have differences. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. It's
reciprocal too. I mean, one of the things that's very, I guess, flattering is that how many of my friends that I've gotten to know are curious about my faith. And I'm really better at expressing my faith as a Christian because I'm now in those moments where they're going, I don't understand this from your faith. Would you tell me what this is about? And so just as I am probing and asking questions and curious about somebody else's faith, they then feel comfortable enough in the relationship to turn around and do the same thing. And it's amazing. One of the things that happens oftentimes in the midst of that is then when you have a really good relationship, you have a sense of humor with one another. And so it's really fun to have those conversations because you're talking to somebody who just doesn't get some of the things that we do, and we don't get some of the things that they do. And and we can laugh about it and say, and even kind of kid each other a little bit when you get to that point. But I think it's really the testament of the relationship or the test of the relationship is that it's not one way. It's not just I'm a Christian, everybody knows about me, but I have this relationship, and now as I'm asking them questions about their faith, they're asking questions about my faith. It makes me sharper and better about how I understand my faith as a Christian.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't probably get as hard-hitting of questions about faith as Billy does, thank goodness. But I think that is true. Yeah, as you see those common elements, you also think, oh, how am I going to explain this? Which might sound sort of weird to somebody who didn't grow up in the Christian faith.
Well, and it's a different conversation when we're curious and someone else is curious than when we are kind of on the, onward Christian soldiers bandwagon defending our faith, right? As opposed to like, let's just get to know one another and be curious about this thing. And what is this body and blood? What is that? You talk about laughing. That's probably one of the things in my own relationships that we've laughed about the most is, what do you mean body and blood? You a bunch of cannibals out there? What's happening?
Yeah, what's wrong with you?
Yeah. So sometimes this work gets hard. We've already talked a little bit about that. Sometimes it's hard because we have to say hard truths to people that we love. And we know that in Frisco, that has been a challenge lately, that as the community has grown, there have been voices, sometimes voices from the outside that have been challenging. It's been something that's come up at a few city council meetings, and the church has shown up. And so can we talk about that a little bit?
Sure.
How has the church shown up? What's been the experience of that? I'd love to just let y'all take that away.
Let's talk about how it started. And it has started more recently with fear. And fear oftentimes leads to hate, and hate sometimes now leads to hate speech. Our city council, like most councils in the United States, has open policy about speaking, and you can sign up and you can speak. And at our city council meetings, you actually have a period where it is really called public input, where you can talk about anything in the world you want to talk about. And if you want to come talk about the potholes in the street, or how this street needs to be widened or whatever. In more recent days, there has been a group of people that have shown up and has started talking in very derogatory terms about our neighbors who have come to Frisco, who are from South Asia, India, Pakistan, and just hateful things. Now, they've built some of this conflict around H-1B visas, and they are making a lot of accusations about how the H-1B visas are being misused and all of this kind of stuff. There's no proof. There's no allegation. The strange thing about it is that the city council can't do anything about it. It's a federal issue, and so they just have come. But then what has emerged from that was this terrible hate speech. I mean, and it at one particular meeting, it just got so bad where there was speaker after speaker, and the amount of racism that was involved, the amount of ignorance that was involved was just really, really difficult. And so because we have these mechanisms like the Frisco Interfaith Alliance, we gathered that group together. And then because we have a entity of that within our church, we were able to say, what do we need to do? And so we finally decided that our responsibility in that moment was to show up at the city council meeting and en masse and tell a different story about how much we respect our neighbors, love our neighbors, and are so thankful and grateful for the neighbors who are here. But it has been very difficult because there is a small group, a very small group, that continues to show up every council meeting, and they are given their time and they talk and use their free speech to talk about this Indian invasion and the awful ways in which our Indian neighbors are ruining our community, and they won't assimilate and they won't do all these other things. Now, the irony of it was that one of the council meetings we were at was at the beginning of a meeting, of course, we have a Pledge of Allegiance. And on that particular night, the Pledge of Allegiance was done by a group of kids who live in a certain section of Frisco, and they were all kids of Indian descent. And I thought to myself, I can't imagine anything more assimilating an American than to become part of the Scouts of America, right? Yeah. And so it is kind of interesting in that respect. And yet still there were these people that came up and just in front of these children who had just done the Pledge of Allegiance just went on and on about how the Indians are ruining our community and they're taking over our community and they're going to soon be in charge of everything in the community, and our American way of life is going to be ruined as we know it. I mean, that's not just un-American. That's so un-Christian and unfaithful that we just decided we needed to do something about it. So you want to talk about the night we got together?
Yeah, and it was, and I think, so as an interfaith alliance, we had made this decision for a response. And in my mind, I think, okay, before we respond, I want to understand where is this coming from? And we've already spoken a bit to that. So it's fear. It's fear of the other. This group that showed up, they're full of anger, right? They're full of hate. And I think underlying that, again, as we've said many times, is fear. Yeah. So they're afraid. What are they afraid of? I'm guessing losing something, losing power, losing a job. There's one person who's very much about that. Losing their children, losing academic standing is something that's really difficult for some people. So there's some fear there, right? It's maybe a little bit of this scarcity principle, right? There's not enough for me then if you are taking this. And I think then as people of faith, we showed up with what I saw as a two-part response: love thy neighbor, which is what we've been talking about. But also there was a call to know thy neighbor. And I think that both of those things were expressed very clearly by our 5 speakers. Billy was one of those 5 speakers. And so it goes beyond that, loving thy neighbor, but know thy neighbor. And maybe understanding those people's walk who are so angry and who are shouting at these meetings. let me take a step back and try to understand them as well. Let me try to know that neighbor. That's harder for me than to try to know my neighbor that looks different from me. But I think that's the work that we want to do. And I felt really encouraged by the response. We filled that room in our blue shirts of various,
we all wore blue that night.
The color of unity, this particular royal blue color. And so I think that was great too. It was a visual, it was spoken. And I think in the way we behaved as a group, it was very evident that we were people who love our neighbor, love Frisco, love this country, and want good things for all people and all places. Yeah. And so that was encouraging in a time when just things feel hard and things are difficult. It was a really nice show of unity, a show of love, and I hope that people in the community felt that. I think they did. There was a young student whom I would believe to have been of Indian descent who spoke on something else, totally unrelated, but he made a little statement in the beginning of, I can't believe that you all are here doing this. This is so nice. Thank you. And then he talked about something totally different. But I hope that there were more people like that young student who felt the love, who felt that our community is more than the few people who are shouting and who are fearful.
And sometimes it is just the demonstration of showing up, right? So we were very strategic to make sure that we only had 5 speakers that night. We thought if we did more than 5, it's going to get to where people are just, they're just like going on and on. But that, I don't know if you knew this, but there came a point that evening where the fire marshal actually closed the doors and would not let anybody else in because we had packed the chamber so full. And it was this beautiful demonstration of, okay, we're showing up for this. And if it didn't do anything else, I hope it made a statement that in the midst of these small number of people who are shouting hate, there is a packed room of people who are standing on love and love of neighbor.
Well, and I want to kind of revisit something, Katrina, that you said. It's not just love my neighbor, it's know my neighbor. And I found myself kind of thinking for a minute, can I love someone without knowing them? Can I really love them? I wonder if I can be obsessed with someone I don't know. I can be enamored with someone I don't know. But can I actually love someone without knowing them? And so I'm going to drop that in the middle and see where that takes us.
I don't know. I feel like that has some biblical answer that maybe somebody else could answer.
Okay, so I'll work on some of that, right?
This is not a board interview.
No, I'm a word person, and the word trust, right, which is knowledge, comes from a word that we've used for a long time that's very Old English, the word troth. Right, used to in a wedding ceremony when a couple got married, at the end of the vows they would say, "And thereto I pledge thee my troth." And the word troth is the same word we get trust, the same word we get truth, and it's this idea of knowledge. So in order to really, I have to know you. I have to in order to really love you. Now, I would hope that we can start from a perspective that if we believe every person is a child of God, that even if I haven't gotten to know you, that I still can love you. But certainly I think the invitation is always there. I think if Jesus didn't show us anything else, it was that Jesus showed us that we need to take the opportunity to lean in and expand that love, I guess, make that love come alive.
Sure.
In a way in which we really get to know people. And so loving others is also getting to know others. Yeah.
Well, and there's the idea, I may not know you yet, but I know this one true thing about you. And this one true thing about you is that the divine that breathed life into me, breathed life into you. That we carry the same air in our lungs, right? And that's beautiful. You also mentioned earlier this scarcity mindset. Let's talk about that and fear and how that plays into what we're seeing, not only in Frisco, but honestly, what we're seeing nationally play out in these conversations. What do you think that scarcity mindset, how does it take root? I think we know how it takes root, but how do we, the church, speak into that and lean in in life-giving ways that remind us that we serve a God of abundance and enough.
I think theologically, if we are created in the image of God and God is a God of abundance, then that is what we need to learn about ourselves, but it's also what we need to learn about the opportunity we have with the relationships that we have. And so I think, leaning into that idea, the scarcity mindset is real. And in this particular case, one of the ways that it's shown up, it's a very veiled form of hatred and bigotry, but it is these people are coming, and the more of them that come, they're taking away my jobs, they're crowding our roads, they're too many of their restaurants that are, it's just ugly all the way around. But that scarcity shows up in so many ways. I think the hardship is that people oftentimes don't recognize that they have this attitude of scarcity.
Yeah.
And so I think that is one of the biggest challenges. How do we talk a lot about blessings, right? And yet in the midst of that, here's this idea of scarcity. And one of the things we just did recently in our church was this idea of talking about how blessings are meant to flow, right? We sing that in the doxology. And that idea is that the blessings I have are not just to be kept, they are intended to flow out into the world, because when we do that, we recognize the abundance of God. And so some of it is recognizing not just how blessed I am, but also recognizing that one of the ways I can get past the mindset of scarcity is to know that those blessings can flow, and suddenly there's something really beautiful that starts to happen, because then we're not as concerned anymore about what I'm having taken away from me.
Yeah, there is a sense that it's all coming downriver.
Yep.
It's all coming downriver, and it just happens to be passing around, through, and to us and everyone around us, right? And so, how about you, Katrina? Did you have anything you
I don't
wanted to
know
add?
if I had anything to add. The only thing I just was thinking about was that, what is it, all the things I needed to know I learned in kindergarten, and isn't sharing one of those?
Oh, yeah.
And I think, we're just not good at that. I need to hoard for myself and my people. I need to save all this in case I need that. And I just don't think that's the best for anybody. And so that idea of being able to share and let blessings flow, which, is something that I've been thinking about a lot, because we've been hearing that. And, so maybe that's a message that we try to put out there at some point. I think that's a little harder than the love thy neighbor, know thy neighbor. We've kind of heard that. But this idea of letting go a little bit and sharing, I think, is really difficult for a lot of people. So I don't have an answer to that, but I think it's something that's worth thinking about and working on, and seeing if we can somehow help people move in that direction.
Well, and I think the place that really gets over the edge is the point, and this may be a bit more controversial for people. We teach competition a lot more than we teach kindness, right? And so we don't recognize the ramifications of that and the fruits of that.
Yeah.
Now, I grew up playing sports. I love sports, and so that's not just where I'm coming from. But when I think about it, especially in regards to some of the racism conversation that's going on, it's just competition. Right now, people are becoming aware of the fact, right, that white, Western European Christians are now no longer the majority of people in this country. So there's a scoreboard there, right? What was always before this kind of ability that I had to know that my way was probably going to be the way because there's so many more of us is rapidly going away. And so in the racism that goes on, you can just hear it. It's that I'm not going to let there be more of your group than my group. And it's just a sad interpretation of what the world really is. We're not put here on this earth to compete.
Well, and I hear you. I'm latching on to all the pronouns that we've been using, right? Their restaurants, their food, ours and ours, and mine and me. And so how do we create a church that speaks into the world and says, it's not them and us and them. It is us, our. And how do we teach that in real, tangible, I don't want to use a military reference, lived ways, right? What is the practical advice you would give to someone to love their neighbor a little better today than they did yesterday?
I think that is the paramount question, right? And maybe the other way of saying it is it's the question that we need to wrestle with daily. It's not something we're going to answer and be finished with. Mm-hmm. It is something that we are going to have to be faithful and turn around every day. As you were talking about it, I even thought about, I think one of the places we can start is out of our own tradition. Mm-hmm. So we don't pray, "My Father who art in heaven," right? Yeah. It's "Our Father who art in heaven," right? And then as we kind of go along, when we ask God to give us daily bread, part of the daily sustenance that we are given is this opportunity to live into the fullness and the abundance of having relationships with everyone that we can have relationships with. Now, trying to get that down to a base level, I think maybe it's just as simple for some folks as walk out in your neighborhood. Take a walk in the evening, and you'll be surprised in most of our communities these days, you will see people who look different than you and probably have different experiences than you. And we have to begin to say, okay, how well do I know these folks, and how much courage do I have to simply go and begin to say, okay, this is somebody I need to approach and get to know better. Mm-hmm. But that's a daily thing. That's not, I do it every now and then.
Well, and maybe part of our daily bread is more than our food, right?
Sure, absolutely.
Maybe part of our daily bread is give us this day our daily grace,
right?
Our daily love, our daily care, our daily curiosity, that we might share it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Not just a small sort of tangible way I think of doing that too is invite people in, invite people over, maybe share that daily bread. I think a lot of times around a table is a great place to get to know somebody. And I like to, if we're hosting people at our home, I like to make it a mix of different types of people. And that's a way of giving some of my neighbors an opportunity to meet people who are different. And maybe just some of those small steps. Sometimes they feel insignificant, but I think they can be quite big if we keep doing it. If we keep doing the work, we keep making the connections like we've talked about. We keep talking about loving thy neighbor and model that idea of getting to know our neighbors and share around a table with them.
Yeah. Well, we live in a world where we've been told good fences make good neighbors, right? And I think the reason good fences make good neighbors is because we don't really want to be inconvenienced by whatever our neighbor is doing in their backyard, or, that they might see what we're doing in our backyards. I wonder if part of this call to love is the willingness to be inconvenienced by our neighbors. Can we be radically adaptive to them? And is that part of the work that you're finding that you're doing and encouraging?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I can't help but stop, but I love, it's the Robert Frost poem, right? I mean, the Robert Frost poem raises that very question and then goes on, the poet goes on to talk about, no, there's something there is that doesn't love a wall that wants it down, and that we are to be called to be building bridges, not building walls, and how significant that is. But I think some of it also has to do with assumptions that we make about people. And I think that's one of the other things we have to keep ourselves in check with as well. It's so easy, we don't like to think of ourselves as judgmental, and yet we are so quick to see something on social media, to see something on television, to see something and make that quick judgment about that person. Well, that then gets transferred into our daily lives, and we see somebody else and assume, oh, well, that person must really be like that person that I saw on social media, or saw on social media, or saw on TV, whatever it is. And I think we have to be careful with all of that. I think there's a calling, there's a higher calling, and we should assume that as Christians, and hopefully believe that about our other neighbors as well. And that is, yes, we live in a country where there's free speech, but we always talk about how freedom comes with responsibility. We have a responsibility to not only speak freely, or freedom to speak freely, but we need to live into the responsibility of being quick to listen, right? And we need to take the responsibility to not make snap judgments. And so I'm all for free speech, But it comes with some real responsibility that I think we, particularly as Christians, need to model. And there's not everybody that's a Christian right now is doing that.
Yeah. I can't help but think about the opening narratives of Genesis, right? The very first thing God says about the human that is not good has nothing to do with our behavior. It's that the human is alone. And then in those early narratives, we've got God walking with the humans in the garden. And the interesting thing about walking with someone is I can't walk with them face to face. We have to be walking in the same direction to be walking with one another. And so our faces are forward. And there is something that I'm hearing in everything you're saying about the power of not only getting out there in our neighborhoods and knowing our neighbors, but walking with them, looking the same direction together instead of trying to stand toe to toe so much.
Yeah, and that makes me think what you're saying is we want the same things, right? So we should be walking together. We want a nice city. We want a good school. We want clean air. We want services for people. We want help. We want the same things. And so I love that image that you just painted of walking together. And also what that brought up for me is we aren't meant to be alone. We are meant to be in community. And that doesn't mean we are our community and then that community over there, meant to be one big community. So I think that's a beautiful way of looking at what we're talking about here today.
Yeah.
I think it's also we need to interject here the idea of not just having peace, but working for peace, loving peace. I will tell you that among the neighbors in Frisco that I've met, particularly through the Frisco Interfaith Alliance, I've met some of the most peace-loving people, peace-aspiring people that I have ever met. And one of the reasons I'm willing to stand with them and for them is because I've recognized this very idea. They want the same thing in their faith that I want in mine.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as we wrap it up, one of the questions that I'm always intrigued by is what is bringing you hope in this work? What is saving your life in this work that you're doing? Where are you seeing God in the midst of all of it?
That's hard right now. I mean, I'm just going to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm really struggling with exactly that. And so I think the one thing that did give me hope recently was the interfaith response that we made at City Council, because it feels, and I'm usually not one that feels very hopeless, but I have found myself there for a while. And so that gives me hope that we can work together, that we can group together and work towards a common goal, and that we can spread that news of loving thy neighbor. So that response and just sitting in that room with the sea of blue was really uplifting and did give me a great sense of hope in this time that I've personally been struggling with some hopelessness.
Some of the hope that I'm continuing to see in this work is with my neighbor's children and how they get it. And I mean, I referenced that night the scout troop that was there that did the Pledge of Allegiance. The mayor went around and asked them a very difficult question. There was somebody being sworn in that night and said, "What advice would you give our new council member?" And my goodness, the responses they gave were thoughtful and wise, and it made me realize, okay, they get it. Right after that, there was a high school choir that came and sang. And again, the choir was just this picture of beautiful diversity, right? Kids of all different kind of backgrounds, and they sang with this beautiful kind of passion. And I just remember that night thinking, okay, this is where God is. God is in the midst. And when Jesus reminds us how important it is to be childlike, right? And to have childlike faith, that's where I see the hope. I don't want to be a cynical to say, mortality is just going to get us all at that point, and these kids are going to eventually step in and think about how what a horrible world we left them. But I just find a lot of hope in what's going on with our children and with our youth, and they seem to understand that there is a bigger picture here, and they live with the wonder of diversity, not the fear of diversity.
I love that. The wonder of diversity and not the fear of diversity. That's beautiful. That's where we end. My friends, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that this has been life-giving for you as it has been for me. I hope it's been life-giving for you as well, sharing your wisdom
Thanks,
and
Kristin.
experience.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And to all of you out there, if you could do one thing, you've heard wonder, you've heard curiosity, you've heard getting out and going on a walk. Do something tomorrow to love your neighbor a little better then than you have today.
This has been Pod Strangely Warmed. If you enjoyed our conversation today, know that you can find us anywhere you find podcasts. On Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, any and all the places, we are there. So if you want to continue the good United Methodist conversation that you've been a part of today, find us, like us, rate us, review us, and share with a friend so that the good news that is happening right here in our own midst can amplify even more.
You want me to start?
Please. Did you tell I was holding my breath? I was like, I have to answer that.
From Norway to Frisco, Texas. Like, that's a journey.
That is, yes. Well, from sort of, and really, I would say I'm a global nomad. I mean, moved around quite a bit.
She cross-country skis, too. We weren't really impressed with that until we watched the Olympics recently, and we went, oh, my God, Katrina does that.
But I don't look quite like that. But,
well, I don't care.
I go where the Olympians train, so that's kind of fun. The Olympic Center there. But yeah, they are impressive.